You know, ever since people have been, well, people, we've looked at the world around us and wondered about the big stuff. And maybe the biggest question of them all is, what happens when this is all over? Is there more? Is eternal life actually a real thing?
All right, let's just get right into it. For this explainer, we're going to zero in on one particular theological viewpoint and see how it tackles this huge question. We're going to look at what it says, how it claims this all works, and why it might be kind of different from what you've heard before.
Now, for a lot of people, the go-to answer is pretty simple. We have an immortal soul. It's this part of us that's just naturally built to last, and the second we die, it keeps on going. But what if that's not the whole story? The source material we're digging into today actually challenges that idea and offers up a totally different path to forever. So, let's start at the beginning, the foundation of this whole belief. It all kicks off with a central promise, which brings us to section 1, the promise of eternity.
This is probably one of the most well-known verses out there, and for this perspective, it's the absolute bedrock of the whole promise. And look at the language here. It's a stark choice. You either perish or you have eternal life. It really frames it as an outcome that's given to those who believe, not something that's just the default setting for everybody.
So, what even is this eternal life we're talking about? Well, according to this source material, the definition might surprise you. It's not just about living for a really, really long time. It's about the quality of that life, a deep, personal, ongoing relationship with God that, get this, can actually start right now.
Okay, so if eternal life is a gift, then where in the world did this super common idea of a naturally immortal soul come from? Section 2 dives into that, tracing the roots of what this perspective calls an inherited idea.
And here you see the two big ideas go head-to-head. On one side, you've got inherent immortality, that popular notion that our souls are just built to last, automatically. But on the other side is this idea of conditional immortality. The whole thing really boils down to one critical question. Is immortality something we already have, or is it something we have to receive?
And to explain where that inherent immortality idea comes from, the source material drops this pretty shocking quote. It basically argues that the concept didn't come from God at all. Instead, it says it was the very first thing the serpent said in the Garden of Eden, a direct contradiction of what God had warned. It's framed as the original deception. This leads us right to the main argument. I mean, if we don't already have immortality, how do you get it? Let's jump into section 3, the gift of immortality. Okay, so this breaks it down for us point by point based on the texts. First up, only God is naturally, inherently immortal. That's it. Second, whatever shot humanity had at it was lost. Third, it's now something that has to be actively sought after. And finally, the way to find it is revealed through the gospel. You see the pattern here? It's a picture of something precious that was lost, but is now being offered again. This is the next logical question, right? If it's a gift, how does it get delivered? What's the process? How does a person go from being mortal to immortal in this framework? And that brings us to our final section, which is all about the mechanics of how this happens. Section 4, death, sleep, and resurrection.
Now, before we get to life, we have to talk about death. And in this view, death isn't what you might think. It's not an instant trip to heaven or hell. Instead, it's described as a sleep, an unconscious state. The source uses texts like Ecclesiastes 9:5 to argue that when you're dead, you know nothing until a big event in the future.
So here's the roadmap, the play-by-play of how it all comes together. Step 1, in your life, you start that relationship with God. Step 2, when you die, you enter that unconscious sleep. Step 3, and this is the main event, the resurrection. Christ returns and the dead are raised up. And then finally, step 4, that's the moment immortality is given. The mortal is transformed into the immortal. And to really hammer this point home, the source points to Jesus' own words. He doesn't say, I am the immortal soul. He says, I am the resurrection and the life. This positions him as the one who actively brings life back from that state of death, the one who does the awakening. So the whole thing boils down to this really powerful dual idea. According to this view, eternal life starts now. That's the present possession part, the quality of your relationship with God. But the fullness of it, the actual physical immortality, that's a future hope that only becomes reality at the resurrection. Which leaves us with a final thought to chew on. If immortality isn't a guarantee, if it's a gift that you have to seek out and receive, instead of something you're just born with, does that change things? How does that affect the way you look at your life, right here, right now?